Welcome back to another edition of the Night Report podcast. I'm your co-host, Mike Broadbent. Joining me once again is Richie Schneiderite. Richie, another big news weekend for Rutgers. We had a basketball game on Friday. We had a football game on Saturday. The portal's heating up. We had a few new offers on the football side for the class of 2023. We'll get all into that. But first, this podcast is brought to you by BetOnline. Basketball is back, and BetOnline remains your number one source for all your sports betting needs this season. You always find the latest odds, team matchup info, player news, and game trends on BetOnline. And as your continued source for all your sports wagering info, BetOnline features live betting, free contests, and giveaways all season long. It's always the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports and events, whether that's NFL, NBA, NHL, MMA, tennis, boxing, or even golf. You can head to betonline.ag to join and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just make sure to use the promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, to receive your rewards. BetOnline, where the game starts.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of soccer bets you could place right now if you want. I know I see it in the background there, so 0-0 still, unfortunately. So my bet's not looking good. But anyway, we're also sponsored by Adam Goldman. If you don't know Adam, he's the franchise coach. He's a franchise veteran. He's been basically hooking up guys with setting up their own type of franchise, whether that be a food industry business, medical supplies, or something else like similar like that. He's an experienced guy when it comes of setting up these franchises. He's been doing this for 10 plus years. He's also a Night Report member and a Rutgers fan and a New Jersey native, Watchung Hills guy. So give him a call today if you want to change up your career a little bit. 844-800-3726 or franchisecoach.net.
Sorry about that. Couldn't get the mute off. So let's start off with the football talk because that's kind of what everyone comes here for. Rutgers once again lost in blowout fashion on Saturday. It was senior day, last home game of the season. Rutgers played Penn State, who's ranked number 11. They lost 55-10. This is another game where it looked pretty competitive in the first half, and it just really came down to some boneheaded mistakes and turnovers, and then the route was on. Tell me what you saw about this from this game, and did it kind of go as you expected?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, I think I predicted 38-10. It was 55-10 in the end. But the first half, they looked pretty good. They looked solid. They were up 10-7 at one point, and they were moving the ball nice. Like, it actually was moving the ball through the air a little bit, too. And I was like, oh, okay. No, maybe the offense is better now. Then eventually, I think the offensive line just got worn down and they got destroyed. They were getting Wimsatt hit quite a bit. And even when Wimsatt had time, he started to panic and started to throw like these weird short passes, long passes. Yeah. Accuracy is still a major issue. It's a shame that Rutgers isn't going to have Sean Ryan for another year as he's developing into a really, really good receiver.
He's probably going to be he's going to be on an NFL team next year, whether that's as an undrafted guy or a late round pick. Like he's really shown way more than I saw from him at West Virginia or Temple.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, he's progressing really nicely over the past couple of weeks, especially. Hold on, I got the stupid ad in the background that I can't pause for some reason. All right, there we go. Anyway, Rashad Rochelle looks pretty good at running back. I don't know if I agree that he should still be at running back, especially with Sam Brown back next year. I think you could see his versatility and athleticism in that open space type role. So, I mean, how do you not put him at receiver? There's no way he has stone hands, in my opinion. So
he just doesn't have the frame right now to be a running back either. Like you could run him in like the kind of the sweeps that Aaron Cruikshank does and like the occasional handoff, but he can't hold up to more than like a gadget type role at running back. So I agree that he should be worked in more as a receiver.
Yeah, I don't get it though. Like why put him at running back? But it's tough. I guess you guys got to get him on the field at this point. But he's done really well. The defense overall looked really good. I know after talking to some of the Penn State guys, I know up in the press box, they're like, "Who's that kid 23 on defense? Like he's not getting like sacks, but like he's putting up a lot of pressure." And I'm like, yeah, that's Wesley Bailey. This kid's only played defensive end for 2 years now, 3 years maybe. He was a tight end out of high school, but he's developing really nicely. Aaron Lewis, once again, phenomenal.
Man, what a warrior. He was, I thought for, a few minutes there that he tore his Achilles from where he was holding it. He was like pinching the back of his ankle, and then he's, out for a series and he comes back and he's just, the dude is like probably the guy who competes most on the defensive line week after week. I love watching him play.
Yeah, he had a really good game. And then the unsung hero of this game for Rutgers, at least on defense, might have been Avery Young. He forced a fumble.
Yeah.
I forget, he got a nice sack at one point.
Yeah, he had a nice sack early. This is all in like the first quarter to first quarter and a half. He forced the fumble of Nick Singleton to set up that short field. I think we ended up kicking a field goal there. He had that nice sack on Sean Clifford on third down. That was, I mean, I've kind of dogged on him a bit because he's kind of given up a lot of big plays over his time, but he really did come to play on senior day. I do want to talk a little bit more about Gavin though, because I do think that Gavin showed so much progression against Michigan State, and Shiano had mentioned in the press conference that progression isn't always linear. It's as long as you're going in the same direction, it's good, but sometimes you're going to have ups, sometimes you're going to have downs. And this is a big down for Gavin because I thought he had one of his worst games as a Scarlet Knight on Saturday. And it wasn't even because they were getting to him or hitting him. That first quarter, he just had so many errant throws. I think he missed 4 wide open receivers in the first quarter. And that really just set the tone for just how this game was going to go, because we could have capitalized on those wide open receivers, gone up early in the game. And maybe this, I'm not saying we win, but we would have been much more competitive in this game had he not just been so erratic.
Yeah, I mean, go on.
It's just like the same simple stuff. Like he's still like rolling out and sliding down rather than throwing it away, or like to take a short loss rather than take no loss and set up 2nd and 10 versus a 2nd and 13. Like his footwork's all over the place. He's just throwing off his back foot or on the run. He just that's one of the things that like I thought was promising about Evan Simon is Evan Simon was willing to like step up and take the hit in the pocket because he knows he needs that extra half second for a guy to get open. Gavin does not really seem to have that in him right now, and that's not really something you could teach into a quarterback. So I don't know.
Yeah, between that and accuracy alone, accuracy, it's kind of one of those things you kind of either have it or you don't. Like it's hard to perfect that and coach that and develop and teach that. Like it's interesting. And then like the biggest pet peeve with him that's pissing me off is like between the inaccuracy issues, but also the fact that like he has legs. Like he ran quite a bit in high school. He was a true dual threat guy. And then there's just so many opportunities where he's just going to like force it or like run for like a yard instead of like, or not run for a yard, like just take the sack or take the lost yards instead of like just run. Like you have the open field. Yeah. If no one's open, go up the field. We saw a glimpse of it in game 1. And maybe it's the injury, for the previous injury history from this year with the ankle.
I hope that's the case. I really do.
If not, like it's super concerning that he's not like processing it quick enough to be like, oh shit, run, like open field.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing with quarterbacks. I would argue that, yeah, you can have the strength, the accuracy, but the biggest thing is you need to have the smarts. And that's a reason why Noah Vedra was the starting quarterback for the past 4 years. I don't even know.
It would have been 3 years this year had he not gotten hurt in the spring or in the summer. I mean, at some point, like people were like, harping on the boards and on Twitter and stuff like that, it's such a small sample size with Gavin. Like he'll turn it around. Like at this point, he's thrown over 150 passes in his college career. He's thrown 153. Guess what his completion percentage is right now?
It's got to be 40s.
It's 45.1% on 153 career passes. That is abysmal. That is terrible. And we can make excuses for him left and right. But this isn't like his completion percentage on 21 attempts last year. That is too small of a size to judge. But that was 42.9. This year, it's slightly higher than that. It's 45.5. This is who he is. Like, even if he made a massive improvement, which would be getting into like 55%, 55% is still a really low completion percentage. Like, he basically needs to have like the Josh Allen miracle this offseason in order to like really develop into an accurate passer. It's tough to really say that's going to happen.
I'll play devil's advocate a little bit here and try to hype him up. But like the receiving core stinks. They can't get open. Sean Ryan's only got a 10, and that one where he was wide open along the sideline, I think he overthrew, and that was the pick. And then the offensive line's just it's bad. It's really bad. I know Kobe, like everyone wants him to be the option at guard, and I think I said this last week. I don't think he's a guard. But there was the one play where Wimsatt fumbled on that sack from Curtis Jacobs. And if you watch Kobe on that play, he runs. Curtis Jacobs goes right past him, and Kobe just does a whole 180. He's like, oh shit, like,
yep.
Like, and maybe it's just a freshman mistake for Kobe, and he'll develop into a nice player. I think he could be a really good center, but I don't think he's the option at guard. But the other issue is if you put Lorenzo back at guard, you have to issue at tackle. If you move Dorenzo at tackle, you have an issue at guard. Ireland Brown was out too, so then you have an issue at center, kind of. Zelinskis didn't do bad, but he didn't great either. So that's, I think, offensive line, wide receiver core. Johnny Langan had a pass that went right through his hands. Then he fumbled another one.
Man, holy crap. For a guy who's played as much ball as he has in college, what an awful game for him against Penn State.
Kidding.
Like, what was it? It was like 2nd and 10, and it was like a dump-off pass to him. He was, 1 or 2 yards behind the line of scrimmage. He jumps. For some reason, I don't know what he's jumping into 2 defenders, and then he doesn't even get jarred loose. He loses the ball midair, and it's an easy scoop and score. Like, what are you doing there? Are you going to gain an extra yard to make it 3rd and 10? You just have to be smarter than that. And then the easy drop that would have given us the first down, 2 series later, he was terrible on Saturday.
Yeah, I don't get. I don't know if he's the answer. And he has another year technically. Does he come back? Who knows? Alimo has another year. Does he come back? Who knows? Konopka might be the best of the group, and that's not saying a whole lot because he's okay at best. Like, Mike Higgins is still developing. They have a tight end coming in, Logan Blake, but what do you expect out of him, really? He's decent, but I don't know how good he'll be. And they obviously are throwing out offers at other tight ends now. So it's a very bad position group currently.
It is, and tight ends like offensive linemen and defensive linemen, those guys need a lot of time to develop their bodies because you're asked to do a lot as a tight end, possibly the most demanding position in football, because you not only need to basically be almost as good of a blocker as a lineman, but you need to be almost as good of a receiver as a wide receiver. So it is a very tough position, and it takes really special athletes to be a good tight end. And Rutgers doesn't really seem to have a guy who can do both right now, which is unfortunate. But we do have a lot of, we have a lot of hooks in the water. Mike Higgins and Victor Konopka have shown some promise, but they're going to need to show a whole lot more next year. I do want to talk about, I thought somebody had a great post on the board. It's LI Knight, and it's just kind of describing how this team's 3 stages tend to go against good teams, where we have this initial phase, which is the competitive phase, where things are going well. Rutgers is, showing it can compete with these top teams as long as they don't make big mistakes. And then there's just an implosion phase where somebody makes a mistake and then everybody starts making mistakes, whether that be penalties, whether that be turnovers, whether that be just running the wrong route. Everyone seems to catch this bug, and then it just starts this third phase where it's just the aftermath. And it's just this second half long malaise where it's kind of you're shell shocked and you just want the game to end, and it's just hard for everybody to watch. It's hard for the players. So what do you think can help break this implosion phase that we find ourselves in time after time against these good teams?
It's tough. It's it's the good old "Are you screwed?" It's been around for God knows how long. But no, it seems like they're putting together good first halves. And the second half, it's just a collapse. Whether that be this game, whether it be the game before that, or the game even before that, it's been a struggle these past couple games. And I think it's just a fact of the Big Ten. The Big Ten is the toughest conference. I didn't say Big Ten East. I said Big Ten. That's you had a 31-0 loss against Minnesota. They're 52-17. Then you look competitive against Michigan State, and then back to Penn State, and you look awful again. You got to recruit better. That's end of story. Now, I'm not saying some of these recruits won't pan out in this class, but this is by far Shiano's worst class since he's been back, in my opinion. Now, some of them might pan out. I think Jashawn Benjamin's underrated. I think Fama Touré's underrated. I think Braithwaite's a pretty good receiver, too. But there's also some questionable ones, guys that you probably don't take until it's a December type time or November when you're looking to just fill spots. But Abraham Wright, another one who I think should actually be bumped up, and I actually just submitted a request to bump him up the other day. But they have some good ones, but it's recruiting. And then portal, too. Your portal guys, Sean Ryan panned out. Who else came in the portal? Billy Tyler was a bust. J.D. Dorenzo panned out. Yeah, he hasn't been as good as I would have hoped, but Dorenzo's been a serviceable player. Yeah, I mean it's tough with the portal too. That you can hit and miss, and you got to recruit better guys at the end of the day. And I think this offseason you got to hit the portal as hard as possible for linemen, not just linemen, any offensive skill player too. You need to hammer that one away. It's been ugly. Most of these portal guys they're getting aren't Like Willie Tyler, how many offers did he really have in the end? And he's been awful.
Yeah, I don't know
Rutgers,
his full situation, but to bounce around that much is not usually a good sign.
Yeah. Dunlap was awful. Taj Harris was a bust.
If you just take a look at our depth chart, though, like people who shit on the portal and say it stunts development, like a lot of these guys, they need to take their first 2 to 3 years to like get their bodies ready, to get their head, their minds ready for what a grind college football is. But you look at our depth chart. Sean Ryan is a transfer guy. He's worked out well. Aaron Cruikshank, transfer guy, worked out well. Willie Tyler, transfer guy, no. Curtis Dunlap, transfer guy, no. Ireland Brown, transfer guy, he's worked out. JD Dorenzo, transfer guy, he's worked out. Johnny Langan, transfer guy, hit or miss. I'd say he's right down the middle. I wouldn't say he's been a bust or been successful.
Youngblood.
Noah Vedral has been, meh when he's been healthy and playing. You find Maja, he's a starter as a transfer. He's been pretty good. Not like one of our best defensive line, but serviceable. Christian Braswell is a transfer. He's been fantastic. If you look to last year, Trey Avery, who's now in the NFL doing really well, he's had his moments. I mean, we have so many transfer guys who have made an impact here that the portal is so important to this program to help let those younger guys develop and to just make us competitive. Because I don't think we win 4 games this year without the contributions of a lot of these transfer guys.
Yeah, no, and I know a lot of people keep preaching on the boards. They're like, yeah, well, do we really need a transfer with the freshman offensive lineman? Like, offensive line's the group that takes the longest to develop. So I don't anticipate any of them as starters next year, to be honest with you. Maybe Kobe if they want to keep him at guard. But I don't anticipate Kobe overtaking Ireland Brown. And then, like, the rest are tackles and, like, a guard or two. But, like, still, like, I don't see these guys taking over these spots. Like, I think you keep hitting the portal, keep developing those guys on the side. Maybe they get reps here and there. Maybe giving them, like, backup reps or garbage time reps or whatever you want to call it. But it's the same thing with every other position. Like, you start grooming, like, you get a transfer, probably a defensive tackle again if Majay's gone, if Ahana2 leaves. Get another transfer, put them in there, and just keep developing the big guys in the trenches. It's huge, but transfer portal is the easiest way to rebuild this program, and it helps with development, like you mentioned, and it also helps with being good for a year. Look at Michigan State; they were a 10-win team because of the transfer portal. Then they're a 5-win team this year, 6-win. I don't know if they won that game. I think they lost to Indiana.
They did lose to Indiana, yeah. But it builds on itself. So kids want to play at successful programs, and the more successful you are, the better recruits you're going to get. So you help backfill that pipeline when you can actually compete and win. Like, I wish there was a metric for like how many benefits that like a guy like Kenneth Walker provided to Michigan State, both monetarily and also from like the average recruiting ranking they're going to get from a guy, because they can point to that dude and be like, hey, we develop guys here. We also, we get guys to step in the transfer portal and we turn them into NFL stars. So you can recruit kind of both ends of that.
I mean, they had a top 25 class last year. Yep. Now they have like a top 40 class. And is it based on record 100%? No, but it definitely helps.
Oh, yeah.
So anyway.
Is there anything else about that Penn State game that you wanted to go over? For me, there wasn't too many positives. I thought the defense played really well to start the game. Like they had a few big plays allowed, but they just really shut down that Penn State running game. I thought they played with their totally lights out until the wheels started to fall off at the end of the second quarter. Yeah, no, I mean Austin Dean stepped up kind of well. I thought he had a pretty good game. He was getting involved in a lot of stuff, so that was good to see considering Jennings was out. Jennings actually has had a great year. I know we haven't talked about him much, but he's had a really good year for Rutgers, and he might have played himself into like a rookie mini camp / undrafted free agent type of deal now. Yeah, I mean, other than that, the defense looks phenomenal. Pay Harris Simiak whatever you need to this offseason because he's going to have some suitors. Yep. But yeah, that's all I got. All right, let's pivot to football recruiting then. Then after that, we'll get into some basketball stuff. So we had a few new offers in the class of 2023, which is kind of surprising this late. But tell us a little bit about the new offers we put out, and then we'll talk transfer portal after.
So the two new offers were both visitors this past weekend. One was tight end / offensive lineman, Nadir Chirchi, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Virginia kid, doesn't have a ton of offers really. He's got like Charlotte, UConn, Rutgers, VMI, and that's actually it currently. All programs are pursuing him as either a tight end or lineman. I know Rutgers told him he's an athlete, so basically it's like, hey, we'll get you on campus. We'll kind of see how we can build you, whether that be I think he's 6'7", 250. Add 25 pounds of muscle or more and become a lineman, or just add like 10 and stay at tight end. I personally, after watching little clips and like right before this and talking to you about it, what you watched, I think we're both in agreement. He's not a pretty good tight end. He's probably more of a blocking guy. So it would lead me towards him being an offensive lineman at the next level. But then again, I did say that about Konopka, and now Konopka's still a tight end. So who really knows in that aspect? It's a weird group. Maybe just get the best blocker possible and just throw him there. But the other one was Vincent Jackson at Central Dauphin in Harrisburg, PA, Central Dauphin East. I don't know if I pronounced that school correctly either, but he's got a couple more offers. He's got like Buffalo, Akron, UConn again, Kent State, New Hampshire, Ohio. He's just a massive kid. He's like 6'6", like 280, 285, something like that. He's just big body guy. I'm still doing some like reconnaissance, as I like to call it. I'm still like talking to like a couple coaches from the area, trying to figure out like what's he good at, like what stands out about this kid? Why is he so under recruited at that size in an area that's pretty well known for high school football? So it's a little interesting. I'm still trying to learn more about him, but he is a massive guy, so we'll see how it happens there. But he also was on campus and got the offer. Other than that, I mean, it's kind of they're going to punt to the portal, it seems like, and that's probably the right thing to do because, like we just said, you get immediate help, and it helps your program get better too.
Yeah, no, I think when you're deciding between going after either a sleeper high school recruit, especially along the lines, or a portal guy, I would say you almost always lean the portal guy because, you could spend 3 years developing a kid who, is either a guy you like as an athlete or a kid who, you think is a little under the radar. And then it could turn out he's just not very good. But these portal guys, you typically have 3 to 4 years of film on them because a lot of them are grad transfers. So you know what you're getting. And if you don't like what you're seeing, you don't recruit him. But most of the time, you will like what you're seeing in a portal guy if you're actually pursuing him. So I always think you should lean towards the portal guy. Speaking of portal guys, though, today has seemingly been like the day the portal started to heat up. If you guys have been following the portal thread on the boards, we have 8 new follows from the staff in the last 24 hours from from a lot of different positions, primarily from FCS schools because the FCS regular season ended and a lot of these teams either didn't make the playoffs or have been eliminated already. I don't know if you've been catching up with what's going on with Rutgers in the portal. I do think there's one really interesting name that's shown up there. His name's Gavin Pringle. He's a corner from Bucknell. So Joe Susan, who's currently the interim tight ends coach for Rutgers, was the head coach at Bucknell prior to joining the staff again under Schiano. And he was the guy who recruited Gavin Pringle to Bucknell. And he's just been nothing but, a fantastic player there. He's a 3-time All-Patriot player. He had by far his best season this year. He had 42 tackles, 3 picks, and 18 pass breakups in 10 games this year for the Bison. And so he's just, obviously Greg Schiano went to Bucknell as well. He had a really good PFF grade. He had an 81.4 grade, which is the 53rd best corner grade out of 940 qualifying corners this year. So he's just a ball hawk, and he's got the ball skills to play at this level. I really think he would be a great addition to the corner room, especially because we're losing Christian Braswell. We could use another really high-end corner. I mean, you can never have enough corners, honestly.
No, he's interesting because Maryland kid, so obviously he's from the area. He's done pretty good, and not to mention, I know you mentioned Schiano went to Bucknell and Susan coached there, but didn't one of Schiano's sons play there as well? I
believe Joe Schiano played at Bucknell, who's now on the staff as well.
Yeah, so it's an interesting name.
He might have actually played with Gavin. I'll have to check that because I think Joe graduated in like 2018 or 2019, so that would check out.
Yeah. Now, mind you, it's a big jump. We've seen it with Brandon Sanders, and Brandon Sanders wasn't the best. Obviously, medically retired and honored on Senior Day on Saturday as well. But it is a big jump. But sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. That's recruiting as a whole.
Yeah, but it is. I think it's interesting to see like what positions the staff is primarily targeting in the portal based on their follows. It looks like so far, maybe just looking at numbers, we're looking at adding a quarterback. We're looking at adding multiple receivers. Receivers by far the most targeted position group. Looks like defensive line and defensive back are also two positions that they're currently looking at. They followed their first offensive lineman today. Trevor Radcevic from UPenn. He's a center. He's a 3-year starter there. He's from Manalapan. I think this is a guy we should also take a real hard, long look at because he's been a 3-year starter at UPenn. He's got really good grades on PFF. This year he's finished as the 32nd best center out of almost 300 qualifying centers. Seen a lot of interest since he jumped into the portal from both Power 5 and Group of 5 schools. I think he'd probably be a guy you could just have step in and shore up the center position because obviously Gus Zelinskas, Shiano talked about this specifically, he wasn't ready to play last year when he was called in. I still don't really think he's ready to play. Ireland Brown has been hit or miss this year, in my opinion. So it would be nice to stabilize that center position while the other guys could develop because, I mean, if you remember, Ireland Brown switched over from defensive line to center mid-season last year. So it would be nice to let him develop a little bit more, become like a more of a rotational guy and get some reps in at lower stakes situations.
Yeah, Shiano said it in the past. Like, if there's a guy that's better out there that they can add to their team, whether that be high school or transfer, they're going to do it, obviously. So if this kid, based on, I don't know his stats that are like and how good the Ivy League really is, but a lot of schools are picking up Ivy League guys. Look at Penn State's left guard this past week. He was a Cornell guy. The year before that, they had a Harvard guy. There's a Davidson guy at Northwestern who's, I think, playing himself into an NFL role. The Ivy, maybe Davidson's not Ivy, but that level of football is it's not crazy for them to make that jump. Hell, DeRenzo's probably your best lineman, and he second best maybe if you count Holland Pierce. You can go back and forth with that one, and he's from fucking Sacred Heart, like.
Yep.
So it's not crazy.
Yeah, and there's a reason why so many FCS guys are drafted by the NFL too. Like they can clearly evaluate talent, and if you just kind of look up and down every NFL roster, every NFL roster has FCS guys on it. So the talent is there. Sometimes it's they're under recruited. Sometimes they grow 3 inches in college. Sometimes they just take football seriously for the first time in college. So there's so many reasons why a good player could be in the FCS that I don't really think it's fair to just blanket statement say he plays at this level, he can't do it at the Big Ten, because that's clearly not the case.
Yeah.
Now, will it work out for everybody? Absolutely not. But it will work out for some, and that's kind of where the talent evaluation comes into it and the development of players comes into it.
Yeah, and offensive line, and like I've said it so many times before, this is like the hardest position to judge. You don't know what a guy's going to look like or how fast he's going to be when he adds 40 pounds or 30 pounds or loses. In case of like a Holland Pierce, like no one knew who he was, and then he lost 70, 80 pounds, and they're like, holy shit, this kid's pretty good. Like,
I want to say that he came into Rutgers weighing 450 pounds, and now he's at like 330. So he's lost like a cheerleader's worth of weight since he got to Rutgers, rebuilding his body. So
it's
so much
they're hit or miss. So I mean, that's why these guys are popping up like in the portal every year, and it's like, all right, now with the way the portal is, like I'm gonna play my 4 years, get my Ivy League degree, and then go boom right up.
Yep.
So
the portal's getting crazy. Stay tuned, because I mean, this is the first week the staff seems to really kind of be diving into it, because it's the first week that guys are truly like officially entering it en masse. So just stay tuned. And as the season ends and Rutgers isn't going to be going to a bowl this year, I think you'll see the staff really ramp up their efforts in the transfer portal coming up in the following weeks. So I don't have any more football stuff. Let's pivot to basketball. So Rutgers played Friday night at Mohegan Sun, played by far their worst game of the season. They just couldn't do anything offensively. Temple just totally dominated that game. We lost 72-66, but the final score isn't really indicative of how how much Temple outplayed Rutgers, because they were up by like 10 plus for the majority of the game. Rutgers closed the lead late, but tell me a little bit about what you saw from that game. And we have a game tomorrow against Rider. And what do you hope to see fixed for that game?
I mean, for starters, I have to eat a lot of crow on that one. I kind of talked shit about Temple like the week before, but I will stand true to the fact that they only had 2 players, but there's probably a third now, I guess you can argue. Jameel Reynolds had a hell of a game, and I'm a little surprised they didn't attack Cliff a little more. Like he was putting up pretty good buckets on Cliff. And defensively, Cliff looked like he had some issues with him. And don't get me wrong, this isn't like an unknown guy. Like Jameel Reynolds played pretty well at UCF before transferring to Temple. But he gave Cliff some fits, and I was a little shocked. I didn't see that one coming. Yep. Obviously, Khalif Battle, NJ Guy, Metuchen native, lit it up like 8 of 17. They locked down Dunn, but Rutgers had no answer for Khalif Battle whatsoever. The ball without Paul, that kind of rhymes. It's without Paul at point guard, you have no one that can dribble up the ball. I think Cam Spencer's best role, he can do it technically, but his best role would be off ball and spotting up and doing stuff like that. But when it comes to him taking up the ball, you're just losing another shooter. And then you got Derek Simpson, who looked like a freshman out there. He was 1 of 11. Like, he couldn't hit a bucket. And then, end of the day, this team just couldn't hit a 3 for the life of them. They hit 2 threes. This game's completely different.
Yeah, but and that 3 came in the waning moments by Derek Simpson. Like, we got, basically nothing out of our starting guards until the end. Like, Cam Spencer had, he scored a bunch towards the end on, like, dribble penetration and like, layups. Mm-hmm. But I think I texted this to you. I think we had, like, we were 1 for like 15 to start from our guards shooting wise. It was just a really, really bad night. We went as a team 1 for 16 from 3, 19 for 29 from the line. That's 65%. I think we were in the high 70s or in the 80s for every other game from the free throw line. Like, if you just look at some of the stats like on their own, you'd really be puzzled as to how we lost this game, because Temple committed 25 fouls. We committed 18. Temple committed 20 turnovers. We committed 13. Rutgers had 12 steals. Temple had 6. Temple, though, it was a much better passing. They out rebounded us. They also passed the ball way better than us, which is very concerning. Kind of goes to your point of like, this team really doesn't have like a great facilitator outside of Paul, because Temple, they came into this game, I want to say averaging like 12 assists a game. They had 17 assists to Rutgers 9. Rutgers just, our ball movement was just horrendous against Temple. Like, it was like a beautiful game to watch for the first 3 games, because the ball movement was so seamless. Everyone seemed to be making that correct extra pass, like finding the open man in the corner or getting the easy like layup or dunk from Cliff. Like, but none of that was on display against Temple, and that's what really concerns me, is because if Paul does miss more time, this team is not, like Derek Simpson. The first 3 possessions, the one he threw out of bounds, the one he like dribbled into nobody and got tangled up and turned the ball over, and the other, I want to say that he also like threw a bad pass and he got stolen, but he was just really, really bad as the primary facilitator.
Yeah, and then when you're missing 2 players, it kind of shows your depth a little bit, and there isn't really much depth beyond that starting 7 or that first 7 players. Like, after that, like, the bench had 2 points combined on 1 of 7 shooting. Yep. And what do you call it? Like, Reber came in and Reber didn't even take a shot, which was weird. Like, I know like there's a lot of hype behind like beat writers and a couple reporters and stuff this offseason, but he's not playing at all whatsoever. Wolfolk is basically taking his spot, it seems like, but he barely played too.
Yep.
This was just about shutting down those guards, and they shut down one, I would argue, because Damian Dunn didn't really do much, and he was the nation's leading scorer going into the game, but they couldn't do anything for Battle. And it's also a tale of 2 halves. This team gave up 38 points in the first half, and they gave up 34 in the second half. It doesn't look like much of a difference, but they played phenomenal in the second half. They scored 43. They played really good defense, and it was a lot of free throws at the end of the game too that made them get to that 34 mark. But the second half, they're a completely different team. Like, and I think honestly, it's not crazy to say this. I think if this game played out for 2 to 3 more minutes, Rutgers might have pulled this out, because they were on like a little bit of a run.
I was going to say something like that, but it's like kind of like what's the point? Like if this game had a third half, Rutgers would have won this game because they did play a lot better. And I think it's primarily, if you were watching, it's because they started to press in the second half, and the press was really effective against Temple. And I don't know why they only did it for like the final 15 minutes. Like Pike is not afraid to change up strategy mid-game. And, it was clear that whatever they planned to do against this team was not working in the first 5 minutes, first 10 maybe max. Mm-hmm. They needed to change their strategy, and to Pike's credit, he did in the second half. But if they would have started pressing earlier in the game, I think we probably would have I don't want to say they would have won, but I think it's much more likely they would have won than they would have lost because that press was just devastating for Temple. They were making a lot of mistakes when they were getting pressed.
The rebounding too, like that's a big thing. I know Pike said it last year. He's like, or this offseason, he's like, we're a much better rebounding team, but like, I don't see it. Like it's maybe Cliff gets his 10 plus, but everyone else, it's like, Mag had a couple. I think most of those came late though, if I recall correctly. I think he only had 3 going into like the final 10 minutes, and then he got like 3 within like a 2-minute span. Hyatt's not getting rebounds. I know Caleb will help that, and Paul helps that too because of their size when they come back. But you need these guys back if you want to make any type of run this season. Now, adversity has been interesting for Pike because every time there was like an adversity type game like this, or like Lafayette last year, they go on a crazy run. Mind you, the schedule going forward is not very good. Like Ryder tomorrow is awful. Central Connecticut State's awful, but Miami, Indiana, Ohio State, Seton Hall, Wake Forest is a hell of a stretch. If they could pull out 3 to 4 wins in that group, that's huge.
Yeah, you say Ryder's awful. I don't think they're awful. Like if you look at their schedule, they played Providence to a 1-point game at Providence. I think Stetson is supposed to be pretty good this year.
They beat someone big this year.
The Atlantic Sun. Stetson did?
Yeah, Stetson they beat South Florida and Florida State.
Yeah, so Stetson's no joke. So Ryder's been playing a lot of good games. Rutgers is going to need to come to play tomorrow night because I don't think they'll overlook teams like they might have last year. But at the same time, like, you're down right now, assuming that the injuries don't make any changes. You're down 2 of your best 3 players at the moment, maybe 2 of your best 4, because I think Cam has kind of elevated himself into probably the second or third best player on this team. But let's just say you're missing 2 of your best 4 players. You need those guys in order to really, especially like as we're going into the Big Ten season, like in the next week or maybe the next 2 weeks, like you're going to need all your guys ready to go because when we play Indiana on the 3rd, when we play at Miami, we're going to need Caleb. We're going to need Paul. So I hope that their injuries don't really slide them for more than this week because we're going to be in really rough shape trying to go against those teams without all our dudes.
Yeah, I know their numbers don't look crazy, but the one guard, Dwight Murray from Georgia, like he's putting up some really good numbers. Mm-hmm. I know he's a transfer from somewhere. I forget where he's from exactly. Incarnate Word or whatever. He's a transfer. The whole lineup's transfers, actually. Tariq Ingram's a pretty good center. He's a former PA guy. I don't know if Rutgers fans remember him, but they did offer him out of high school back in 2019. Mm-hmm. He committed to Wake Forest, signed with Wake Forest, and then transferred up to Temple. I mean, there's not like they're nobodies. Like these guys, they're multiple ranked recruits for a program like Ryder. That's pretty impressive. I'm interested to see how Ingram goes against Cliff because I know he's a little smaller, but Reynolds was a little smaller than Cliff too, and gave him fits. Like, Cliff definitely didn't look like an NBA center defensively last game, or I guess offensively too. He definitely picked it up in the end, but they can't take anyone for granted anymore. This is it. And look around college basketball. Look at all of the losses. Ohio beat Michigan yesterday on a buzzer beater. Florida State's 0-3 or 1-3 against like Stetson and other programs.
Yep.
Teams are losing left and right. Like it's a dangerous year in college basketball, and you cannot look past any single program whatsoever.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. Michigan's lost 2 games they probably should have won at this point against Arizona State. They got blown out, and then, like you said, against Ohio. There's been a lot of quote-unquote bye games is what they call them because you basically pay a team to come play at your arena, and usually they're not very good. But yeah, Dwight Murray's dangerous. He's hitting 47% of his threes this year, and that's on pretty high volume on over 4 or 3 attempts a game. And years ago, he hit 42% of his threes. He had a bit of a down year last year, but he's a dangerous player. He's a little undersized. He's only 6 feet tall, but he's probably, their Damian Dunn. We need to shut him down because a lot of their offense goes through him. I think he averages so they average 76 points a game, and he's got almost 21 of those. So he's, a quarter of their scoring right off the top. So if you stop him, you probably slow down their offense significantly. This is not a game you could just sleepwalk through, and I hope Rutgers comes to play. And I hope that they're not the same. Like, we play really good at home, but we are very mediocre on the road again, because that's a show I'm tired of watching. So
yeah,
we'll see, I guess.
It's tough. Like, and every time you say like there's a small point guard, it always makes me think back to that Fordham game and Nick Honor.
Yeah, yep.
And it's like the kid's given so many Rutgers like beat writers and fans nightmares. And now like you see 6 foot point guard and it's like, oh shit, he's shooting like 50%. Like, here we go again.
Yeah.
But you got to watch out for him. I think they win this pretty easily, but you can't look past it either.
No, and I really hope that Caleb and Paul can come back for next week. I think if you played them tomorrow, I think you'd kind of be asking yourself, well, why the hell didn't they play on Friday? If they were good to go today, they probably were good to go Friday too. We could have used them, but I hope that
game by game basis. So we'll see.
All right. So we covered a lot. I don't have any more. Do you have anything you wanted to mention before we sign off here, Rich?
Big USA soccer game in probably about an hour or so. I have a Shannon press conference coming up real quick. Ask him about all the good stuff that happened this weekend and upcoming weekend. I think Maryland will get a preview. I don't know if we have a guest or not yet, do we? No, right?
Not at the moment, but we're trying to get somebody now.
Yeah, we'll figure something out. I did reach out to RJ Dill, but he hasn't answered me yet. So I thought that'd be a cool one. Rutgers,
that would
Maryland
be a cool one.
Guy. Interestingly enough, he's been retweeting a lot of Maryland stuff recently. So maybe he's a Maryland guy again.
I mean, he did spend 4 years there and just 1 year here.
True.
So I think it's so easy to assume that loyalties lie somewhere. Like, there's been so many, players both in the NFL and those who haven't gone to the NFL only spent 1 year at a school. But that's what they're most remembered for. Like, for some reason, like Russell Wilson, it's not remembered really at all that he played at NC State for 4 years before he went to Wisconsin. But
that's true. So, but anyway, big soccer game on today. Bunch of big soccer games. So stay tuned for that. If you haven't watched it yet and you don't really know that much about soccer, you got 2 Rutgers alumni as like the analysts. I saw Kari Lloyd on TV talking with Alexi Lalas before, so that was pretty cool. And go USA. That's all I got.
Yeah, and if you haven't seen Alexi since his Rutgers days, you probably won't recognize him because he looks very buttoned up, very corporate now as compared to just a wild child when he was on the banks. But everybody, we really appreciate you tuning in once again. Stay tuned to the boards. Stay tuned to your podcast feed because if there's any news that breaks between now and our Maryland preview, we will certainly do a pod for it. But for me and Richie, this has been another edition of the Night Report Podcast. Signing off.